All right, let's pick up now using the example that we developed previously about changing a tire on a car. Now I've gone through this example and kind of cleaned it up a little bit from our beginning notes so that we can work from them here as we develop this. So once we have this learning outcome planning template created, now we're ready to begin modeling what our course is actually going to be and how it's going to actually be designed. And so here you'll notice I have audience is able to change a tire. What the learner will be able to do is they'll change a tire on a car. How will the learner demonstrate this ability? We'll give them a simulated scenario, and we have a series of knowledge and or skills that the learner will need to perform in order to complete this task. Now, I'm going to switch over here to actual blank modeling canvas that I have ready to go. Now here I'm using learning environment modeling as a way to be able to design what my online learning lesson will be. And so let's begin actually here with how will the learner demonstrate this ability, because we're actually going to start with what the evidence of the learning experience is. And so we know that we're going to have a simulated scenario where they change a car tire. So I'm going to go back over here to my modeling canvas and bring forward an evidence of learning block, and I'm going to change that out. We're going to say a car tire change scenario. Okay, and that's going to be a simulation. All right, so we have that evidence of learning block plotted in our learning environment. So now our next step is really going to be what do they need to know or be able to do in order to reach that. And so we know that there's identify the key parts of a tire. So let's go ahead and bring forward an information building block. We know that this is going to be the key parts to a tire, parts of a tire, and let's say for now that we're going to present this in a short video tutorial. Okay, now we're going to go to the next example here, and that's to list the steps to change a tire. So we're going to go back over here, and that is also a knowledge related issue. So we're going to have an information building block, and we're going to say steps to change a tire. And again, we're going to have that as a video tutorial. And next we're going to have identify the tools needed to change a tire. And so again, we're going to bring an information building block over, and we're going to say tools for changing tires. And once again, we're going to do a video tutorial. Now this seems fairly straightforward. We have our evidence of learning building block here. We have several pieces of information that's important to this process. However, one thing that we do also recognize here is there's not very much instruction that is going on. We've presented a good deal of information and we have an opportunity for them to demonstrate their learning, but we're not guiding or scaffolding their learning process in any sort of way. And this is where learning environment modeling becomes quite useful, because we can begin understanding and trying out different ways to help people learn and prepare these skills. So I'm going to kind of move these aside for just a moment and widen our canvas just a bit, because we're going to do some additional work here. So one of the things that we want to be able to do before the learner actually demonstrates that scenario is to provide them with an opportunity to practice. So let's say, for example, we're going to have a tire change practice exercise. And we'll have this as a guided practice. Okay, so someone might be able to observe them as they change the tire on the car. Now we're going to deal with this in a second when we start talking about online learning, but when we start changing tires on vehicles, first thought, this may be a little bit of a challenging thing that we'll have to overcome here in a bit, and we can do that as we can talk through that here in just a moment. The other thing that we want to look for here is understanding that adults need to feel motivated to learn something, and so we might add in a piece related to dialogue, for example, that deals with understanding the why you would want to change a tire on a car. So we're going to say reasons to change car tires. And we're going to have this as a group discussion. Okay. All right, we've added that in there. Okay, and so we're starting to get elements together that we're gonna need here in just a little bit. Now, the last piece of information, or I'm sorry, the last piece of building blocks that we want to look at here is really feedback, because we don't have any feedback right now in order to support the learner's progress. And so before the learner really goes on to demonstrate their ability in the simulation, we want to provide them feedback in order to do that. And so we're going to have some guided feedback, and that'll be provided by an instructor. Okay, and so we have a feedback here that we're going to be integrating into our learning environment here in just a bit. Okay, so we have a general sequence that is starting to take shape here, but we also have some other things that we may want to add. For example, we want to do some sort of an introduction to this learning environment. So we're going to add an introduction here. Call it a topic introduction. And again, we can do that as a video tutorial or a video presentation, we'll call it. Okay. I'm going to move these over just a little bit there. So we're going to have a topic introduction. We'll kind of talk through this. Then we're going to talk about reasons to change car tires. And then we have these series of tutorials, if you will. And for now, there's a lot of different ways we can organize this, but we're going to keep this in a very linear process. So we have the tutorials that are available. We have the practice exercise here with the guided feedback. And then we're going to have an opportunity for the learner to actually demonstrate their learning. Now, granted, there are a lot of different ways we can do this. However, like I mentioned, we're going to keep this in a relatively linear format. Okay, the next step that we want to do is actually create, start adding contexts to this. Now, we know that we're going to do some of this online. So for example, I'm going to bring forward this online asynchronous block. So we're going to start including the elements that we're going to do online. So up until this section, up until the practice exercise, we have a relatively logical connection of the types of exercise and activities that are effectively done in an online environment. When we start talking about using large physical objects like cars as part of the instruction, things obviously get a little bit more challenging. Not impossible, but more challenging. So what we're going to do now is actually go ahead and add a classroom type element to this. And so we can go ahead and include that. And the reason why I'm using a classroom element here instead of like an experiential block or something is we're still conducting this in a relatively formal context. There's instruction going on, there's feedback occurring. You could make an argument that this could also be experiential. And as long as you're describing what it is and how it's occurring, you can take some of those liberties as a designer, and it would sort of modify the dynamics of what is occurring. Okay, so now we want to look at the actions within this model. So here we're going to begin adding the actions, and because we're in the online environment, the learner is going to have these responsibilities for actions of transitioning between these building blocks. So I'm going to add those in there. And they'll transition here into the classroom environment, of course. This will actually be the instructor's responsibility, so I'm going to go and change that element there. And the instructor is going to transition the learner between their practice and their final simulation exercise there. And we're going to go ahead and add the start and end points. These are notations. And I'm going to move that over here. Okay, extend that just a little bit there. Okay, so now we have our start and end points. And the only other thing that we may want to add here in terms of our notations are actually identifying where the learning outcome is met. And so we can bring our learning outcome example over here, and we'll go ahead and copy that outcome from our planning template and paste it in here. And we'll make the text a little smaller there. Okay, and that will be a system relationship there, so that we know that it is kind of connected there into the environment. And we're going to extend that just a little so we can read it. And so if we zoom out now slightly, we're going to be able to see this very simple online learning design pattern that we've created using our example learning outcome planning template. And so you can kind of see how all those elements begin with the evidence of learning, and we sort of work backwards, if you will, to understand how we build the rest of those elements in, all around the example of how to create some instruction for how to help people change a tire on a car. Just a simple example there.